This farm safety video was made possible by a gift from American Family Insurance. University of Minnesota Extension thanks them for their support of farm safety programming.
I'm Emily Kruckelberg, Extension Educator for Farm Safety and Health with University of Minnesota Extension. In this video, we will cover the dangers and precautionary measures that need to be taken when entering a grain bin.
Grain bins are large metal structures seen on grain farms and grain elevator sites. They usually store corn, soybeans, and other grains. While grain bins are very useful storage structures for farmers, they pose several potential hazards to individuals entering and working with them. Grain bins are confined spaces that are not designed for human occupancy. They have limited entry and exit points, have unguarded machinery, exposed wires, and limited airflow, which can lead to a hazardous atmosphere. One of the biggest dangers when entering a grain bin is grain entrapment. Entrapment occurs when standing on moving grain, walking on or under a grain bridging when the crust breaks, and when grain is piled high on one side of the bin and collapses. Grain bins also have lots of different moving and rotating parts, like augers, that bring up the danger of possible entanglement. Grain bins are high-voltage structures. Lockout-tagout is important to complete before entering the bin to avoid electrocution and accidental running of the equipment. Another hazard is the risk of falling from tall heights.
When taking into account all of these potential hazards, we need to make sure there's a suitable reason why an individual needs to go into the bin. Is it routine maintenance being done or a problem that needs to be fixed? Knowing the reason why the bin is going to be entered will help create a solid plan, both from a safety and emergency perspective. Explore alternatives that can complete the task that doesn't require bin entry. Also, keep in mind that it is federal law that no person under the age of 16 may enter a combined space, including a grain bin.
Grain bin safety starts with the first harvesting and storage of grain. The number of times a worker enters a grain bin can be reduced if the grain stored in the bin is properly managed. Problems that require entering a grain bin usually stem from incorrectly dried grain, improperly cooled grain, inadequate observation of the stored grain, poor initial grain quality, and improper insect control. Managing grain quality is important to keep workers out of the bins. Knowing the condition of the grain in the bin before entering is important as it allows you to know the potential hazards you may encounter. When grain is exposed to moisture, it molds and causes it to clump together, creating a hard crust. As grain is unloaded from the bin, it leaves empty space beneath the grain. When a worker stands on or under the bridge, it can collapse, burying them. Another dangerous condition is when grain accumulates on the side of the bin. The pile can collapse unexpectedly, burying the worker trying to dislodge it in an avalanche. If you do have to enter a grain bin, it's important that all of the necessary precautions have been taken to make the entry as safe as possible. Personal protective equipment, or PPE, is very important. All workers should be provided a harness attached to a lifeline and confirm that it is secured before anyone enters the bin. Grain dust can make breathing difficult. The dust has the potential to cause health problems and may permanently impair a worker's health. Anyone working in a bin, especially when cleaning, should wear an appropriate dust filter or filter respirator. Grain handling and drying can produce enough noise to damage someone's hearing. Repeated and prolonged exposure can cause hearing loss. Wear earplugs or earmuffs when exposed to noisy equipment. Lockout-tagout should be used before anyone enters a grain bin. Have an observer stationed outside the bin that is being entered. Their only task is to constantly watch the person inside the bin. The observer cannot leave while the entrant is inside. If the observer does have to leave, the entrant must exit the grain bin. No one should ever enter a grain bin without an observer present.
Practicing grain bin safety is vital to preventing accidents and improving farm safety in our communities. This is Emily Kruckelberg with University of Minnesota Extension, reminding you to slow down, think twice, and be safe.